During the public inquiry into the Emergencies Act, one of the responses you gave was really detailed and walked Canadians through what you were thinking before you made a big decision. So I was wondering if you could take that same approach to this question and tell us why you decided to appoint David Johnston. Did you consider this perceived conflict of interest?
Right now, a lot of Canadians have very, very real questions that are really, really fundamental. First of all, is our democracy still working? Are our institutions still acting in the best interests of Canadians, or are they being influenced by everything we know that foreign countries from Russia to China to others are trying to do to destabilize us? Are politicians getting the information they need from our security agencies in order to keep Canadians safe? And are politicians then acting on the best interests of all Canadians, or are they acting in their narrow self-interest? These are really, really important questions because they go to our confidence in our institutions at a time where people seem to be anxious, quite rightly, about so many different things, from the rising cost of living, to the war in Ukraine, to the aftermath and echoes of the pandemic, to the challenges of climate change. There are so many reasons for people to be really worried about a whole bunch of things. And if suddenly they can't even trust their governments to be looking out for them, that's a really serious thing. If I'm standing here making a housing announcement on how we're going to be building homes for Canadians right across the country, and Canadians aren't even sure if this government is really focused on their best interest or is in the pocket of some foreign government, that's something that needs to be dealt with extraordinarily seriously. And the partisan nature of politics means that no matter what I say, people are going to, wonder if they didn't vote for me, whether or not they can trust me. And that polarization is getting even more serious in politics these days. That's one of the reasons why, after 2015, when we saw increasing foreign interference in elections around the world, in the US election in 2016, in the French presidential election in 2017, we saw foreign interference taking up bigger and bigger space. So in 2018, when we hosted the G7 in Charlevoix, we created a G7 rapid response mechanisms to counter threats to democracy. And a year after that, we created a panel of independent top public servants informed by all of our intelligence community experts and reports to be able to reassure in real time Canadians if there was foreign interference going on during an election that was in danger of impacting that election one way or another. And in 2019 and in 2021, that panel did its work, and the work of that panel was analyzed afterwards in independent reports, and the conclusion is absolutely clear. Even though there was and there is ongoing attempts at foreign interference by China into our politics, into our democracy, like into our businesses, into our research institutions, into diaspora communities, attempts by interference by China did not affect the outcome of the 2019 and 2021 elections. That's something Canadians can be absolutely reassured by. But Canadians want to know even further, okay, are we doing everything necessary? And are there processes to hold people to account if things aren't being done necessary, if partisan decisions are slipping into that? That's why, in order to reassure Canadians, knowing that any elected politician from one party or another is not going to be able to speak in a way that has full reassurance for all Canadians, and everyone, regardless of who they vote for, deserves to have faith in the system within which they're voting. The decision to take someone of unimpeachable integrity to step back, to look at the entire landscape around national security, to have the security clearances able to dig deep into everything our spies and intelligence experts and analysts are saying, to dig into what the different parties knew, to dig into what the government was told, dig into what experts knew and didn't know, to highlight the work being done by two professional bodies or expert bodies that we created, the National Security and Intelligence Committee of Parliamentarians, that is a bunch of MPs from all parties that have the necessary clearances to look into everything our intelligence communities are doing and have done, and CIRA, which is a similar body that's formed of judges and experts to do similar work and oversight. All those things together actually make up a very robust array of mechanisms that this government and this country has to protect our institutions. And finding the right person of unimpeachable integrity, completely committed and devoted to Canada, to be able to look at that, to ask all the questions of everyone involved necessary, and come out and say, yes, the elections and the integrity held, but these are the things that could and should be improved. And this is the process going forward, and this is why Canadians can be comforted that things are being done right. Or conversely say, no, there's a real problem, the whole system is broken, we need to fix it. This is someone who's going to be able to say these things that won't and shouldn't be interpreted in a partisan way, because this is a serious issue that will impact whichever party is in power for many, many years to come. And making sure we're addressing this with deep seriousness and not partisanship is exactly why turning to an extraordinary, responsible individual who is nonpartisan, who can say, these are the processes that is necessary. Whether it's a public inquiry, whether it's a judicial review, whether it's just more empowering of the institutions that are there, whatever it is, coming from that person with the authority to do that and the ability to reassure Canadians, that's how you deal with a complex, difficult issue like this seriously. So my desire to step aside from the partisanship of this, the partisan advantage and sniping that unfortunately characterizes so much of our politics these days, where no matter how good an idea is, if it's brought forward by a political opponent, it must be wrong, is really harmful. Communities don't work that way. Canadians don't think that way. But in politics, it's gotten so polarized and toxic that we've had to take a step back and find someone who is the right person to say, okay, let's focus on the interests of Canada, of our institutions, of our country, and of Canadians. And let's look at everything that's gone on. Let's restore people's confidence above partisanship. And let's make sure we've got the best possible system moving forward. And that's why it's just so difficult to see that the official opposition in this country has chosen a very different tack, to decide to go full partisan on an issue that, quite frankly, needs to be taken with a level of seriousness and respect that Canadians deserve. Pierre Poilievre wasn't just a minister in the previous government. He was Minister of Democratic Institutions. He was in charge of the integrity of our elections. He was in charge at the time of making sure that China or others weren't influencing our elections. He understands how important this is, or he should. So I am really hoping that the nomination of Mr. Johnston is going to be able to bring down the temperature on this issue and demonstrate, as David has done throughout his entire life, the level of seriousness and expertise and responsibility applied to a very, very important issue is the right path for Canadians and for our country.